Aïe.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends. Welcome to this special session where we'll be talking about the global network of facilitators supporting the capacity building strategy of UNESCO in this particular convention, the Intangible Cultural Heritage Convention. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be here. My name is Deirdre Prince Solani. I'm South African, and I'm one of the facilitators that have been trained by UNESCO and has worked in a number of countries across Africa and the Caribbean. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the ADG for Culture, Erstino Otone, and I'll be handing the floor over to him to say a few words of reflection and inspiration. Thank you.
Inspiration is too much. Excellencies, Mesdames et Messieurs, chère Madame la modératrice, Madame Prince Solani, chers facilitateurs, c'est avec un grand plaisir que je vous souhaite la bienvenue à cette table ronde, enfin ronde, sur le réseau global de facilitateurs de la Convention pour la sauvegarde du patrimoine culturel immatériel. Ce réseau est une ressource extraordinaire pour aider les États, et aujourd'hui on a pu le voir ce matin, à la mise en œuvre de cette convention. Pourquoi et comment ces facilitateurs soutiennent les pays dans leur travail de sauvegarde du patrimoine immatériel? C'est la question que cette table abordera. Car nous avons ici et maintenant l'excellente opportunité d'étendre le témoignage de 5 membres de ces réseaux provenant de différentes régions du monde. Chers facilitateurs, Mesdames Deirdre Prince Solani, Shuba Chatrouri, Harriet Deacon, cher Monsieur Hani Hayanhe et Lucas dos Santos, Roque, un grand merci à vous d'avoir accepté de partager vos expériences aujourd'hui en marge de cette 13e session du comité intergouvernemental. Vous, les facilitateurs de la Convention, êtes réputés pour votre engagement pour la sauvegarde du patrimoine culturel immatériel, qui est le patrimoine vivant des communautés et des groupes. C'est à travers vous que nous travaillons avec les communautés, car ce sont eux qui transmettent leur patrimoine vivant et s'impliquent activement dans cette gestion. En continuant de pratiquer et de transmettre le patrimoine vivant, les communautés, groupes et individus développent des moyens durables pour vivre ensemble et construire des sociétés résilientes, inclusives et souvent apaisées. Il est donc clair que la sauvegarde du patrimoine vivant est essentielle pour le développement durable et ainsi pour atteindre les objectifs de la communauté internationale abordés dans le programme de développement durable, l'Agenda 2030. La Convention pour la sauvegarde du patrimoine culturel immatériel, comme vous le savez, est un outil précieux à cet égard, et le fait que 178 États membres aient ratifié la Convention à ce jour illustre l'importance que ceci lui accorde. Nous savons néanmoins qu'il ne s'agit pas d'un outil facile à mettre en œuvre. En effet, les États se tournent souvent vers l'UNESCO pour demander que nous les soutenions dans leur démarche. C'est pour cette raison que le programme de renforcement des capacités a été mis en place et reste toujours une priorité pour l'UNESCO. Le réseau des facilitateurs a été un facteur primordial au succès de ce programme et il est encore à ce jour. Il a été créé en 2011 et c'est devenu un des piliers du programme de l'UNESCO pour renforcer les capacités humaines et institutionnelles aussi pour la sauvegarde du patrimoine vivant. Now, in its 7th year, the network has grown into a respected and resourceful player for implementing the Convention. In some respects, it embodies the living memory of the Convention during its first decade. Today, it counts over 130 individuals trained in delivering UNESCO's capacity building strategy and materials. Collectively, they represent an impressive resource at your disposal, have an undertaking capacity building activities in more than 100 countries. I encourage you all to draw upon and to strengthen your safeguarding efforts. Let me underline that the work of the network has greatly benefited from strong collaboration with our category center, with our two category centers, and I would like to thank the directors of the centers who are presented here today for this support. Allow me to thank once again our moderator, Madame Dedre Prince Solani, and our other panelists who have traveled to be here with us today. I wish you an excellent deliberation. Une dernière chose, j'ai pu vérifier sur le terrain en Chine sur des projets qui se font en Mongolie et en Corée du Nord, avec notre centre de catégorie 2 à Beijing, qu'effectivement la relation que nos facilitateurs peuvent trouver entre les communautés et les missions de cette convention se fait cher, pot, je veux dire. Et dans ce sens, il est très important de comprendre que finalement, ce travail de transmission, de médiateur, de formateur, devient un instrument privilégié pour ces communautés, qui trouvent dans ces facilitateurs un moyen non seulement de comprendre quels sont les buts de la sauvegarde du patrimoine immatériel, mais d'une certaine façon aussi pouvoir travailler sur une des choses qui devrait être le moteur de nous tous qui travaillons dans le secteur du patrimoine et de la culture en général, de quelle manière on assure la transmission de ces éléments, ces traditions, ces identités. Si nous ne faisons pas ce travail, lamentablement, d'ici 12 ans, au objectif 2030, nous aurons perdu un tiers de tous les éléments qui aujourd'hui font la richesse de nos communautés. Donc merci beaucoup pour votre travail et j'espère qu'on pourra apprendre beaucoup de choses aujourd'hui avec vous. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for those words of introduction and inspiration. Now, just to explain the format for this afternoon's session, we're going to hand over to the panelists. I'm the glorified timekeeper who's going to ring the bell and wave the red flag. And the panelists will begin with just a brief introduction of the work that they have done as part of the network, as well as the regions and the countries that they have worked in, just to give you a sense of the diversity of people that are seated here, but also the places where they've worked. And then we will hand over to Ms. Suzanne, who's from the UNESCO office, to talk a little bit about the history of the development of the network, how it started out as a seed and what it's growing into. And then we're going to go into presentations by the panelists on very specific questions related to the challenges which they have witnessed countries experiencing in the implementation of the convention, and some of the ways in which they as facilitators have been enabled to support the countries in doing the work, and then also to look at some of what the value is of the network. And then we'll hand over to yourselves as audience, as members on the floor, to share some of your observations, some of your experiences of working with facilitators, as well as addressing how do you see what some of the ideas that have been brewing in your heads as states parties for how this network can continue to grow and support the efforts that you are making in the implementation of the convention. So that's really the format for this afternoon. We're going to try to keep to time because we have to be in the room, the main room, by 2:30. So I'm going to hand over now to the panelists. We'll start with Ms. Shubha Chaudhry to speak on her experiences.
Thank you, Deirdre, and good afternoon, everybody. We have very short 2 minutes, so we'll try to deal with that as soon as I can. So I've been part of the Facilitators Network since the early training in 2011. And since then, worked in Laos, PDR, Nepal, and Bhutan in working on the workshops for implementation, for community-based inventorying, and nomination. In addition to that, we also did safeguarding workshops in Nepal and Lao PDR, and introductory workshops in Maldives and Cambodia. Each one of them had slightly different kind of orientation. In addition to that, I've had the privilege of being able to work on training materials for community-based inventory and a workbook for in Nepal for communities and NGOs to be able to work together. I think working on the materials has been a very, very fascinating and fulfilling exercise, because it brings you in very close connection with aspects of the convention which otherwise one may not have gone into that much. So that's what I would like to say.
Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Mr. Hani.
Thank you very much for considering me for this panel discussion. My name is Hani Hayajne. I am from Jordan and part of the capacity building team from the Arab world. I am very happy that I am among my colleagues here from the Arab world, Annie Thabit, Dr. Ismail, and Dr. Ahmed Skonti. With Annie Thabit and Ismail, several workshops related to implementation, safeguarding plans, establishing safeguarding plans, nomination, and inventorying. The main issue here is that we were involved in developing safeguarding plans in some Arab countries, and also inventorying and implementation of the convention in Arab countries in crisis. That was really a very big challenge, but I mean, due to the shortage of time, I cannot talk about these issues, but maybe later I'm going to give some ideas how we were able to solve certain problems, either on the administrative level or on the level of communities and individuals.
Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Ms. Harriet Deacon.
Thanks, Deirdre. My name is Harriet Deacon, and I'm South African, currently living in the UK. I've been involved in the capacity building program from 2010, when we started developing the training materials. I worked a lot with Riek Smeet and other people on the ratification, implementation, nominations, and then later the safeguarding and policy making materials. And so because of my involvement in that, I was involved in the training of trainers workshops in 2011 in Cuba, China, and Zimbabwe. That was a great workshop in Zimbabwe, actually. And then later, there was another training of trainers on policy in Algeria and Peru. And then I've been involved in mainly implementation and inventorying workshops as part of the UNESCO capacity building program in Bangladesh with Sajida Vandal, with Mr. Gala, in Brunei with Sajida Vandal, in Jamaica, in Belize, in Trinidad and Tobago, in Curacao, Namibia, and in Kenya. Deirdre and I did a workshop with people from universities about how to incorporate ICH into university training. One thing I'd like to highlight is that some of the workshops that are conducted by facilitators are actually requested and paid for by countries who are not part of the capacity building program centrally. So I've also worked in Norway, Finland, and South Korea on some of those country-funded workshops, and in Malta, currently providing some policy advice and doing some workshops in Malta.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lucas Roque.
Thank you, Deirdre. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your presence. I'm Lucas Roque. I'm from Brazil. I'm enrolled in the facilitator team since 2011. And since then, I worked in Bolivia, conducting the implementation of the convention workshop. And I worked in Africa with the Portuguese speakers countries, Angola, Mozambique, São Tomé, Guinea-Bissau, and São Tomé Prince, if I didn't forget something. And delivering workshopping trainings, conducting pilot inventories, community-based, and supporting the development of the elaboration of international assistance, and training in participating in the process of training of trainers for these countries. And I also worked in the elaboration of the capacity building materials and sustainable development.
Thank you very much. So now you know who our panelists are. So I'm going to hand over to Ms. Suzanne Schnutgen from UNESCO just to give us a historical overview.
Well, hello to everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here at this roundtable. Well, our Assistant Director General for Culture has already explained a little bit about the origins of this network. But one point that we thought was very important to make is that, in fact, it developed in an amazing way, because when we initially created it, it was mainly meant to implement for UNESCO projects that were also where generous donors actually had given us money. And that were the good times in the beginning. We had actually quite a budget. But then it turned out that these facilitators became known by countries, and they were asked for services also outside the UNESCO managed projects, which actually is wonderful. And what we also saw is, in the beginning, the activities were mainly training workshops. But in fact, when we did our reviews, because we review the program regularly, facilitators say, you know, we're not only trainers, we're actually being asked for all sorts of advisory services, help with this, help with that. And they said it was actually wonderful, the relationships they were building with the national counterparts, and through them also with the communities. But also the difficulty of maintaining that when you work in several countries, so thus there was the request also for expanding the network, which states also asked us to do and which we are doing. But I think that's all I want to say. We feel in the landscape of actors, the Facilitators Network has become a player for the intangible cultural heritage community. And it is at the disposal of states, at the disposal of everybody who wants to solicit their services, and that is really great. And we, from the UNESCO side, what we commit to is to regularly have trainings with the trainers so that we can make sure they're up to date with the latest development of the implementation of the convention, and can help us then in making that further known around the globe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to go straight into the question around the challenges, and we're going to ask our two colleagues, Lucas Roque and Shubha Chaudhry, to speak a little bit about the challenges which they have witnessed countries experiencing in the implementation of the convention, and what are some of the ways in which they've supported and assisted countries in addressing some of these.
Well, thank you. I think we maybe have similar challenges as we go around the table. I should also add, to add to what Suzanne said, that in Lao PDR, I've also worked with on the policy level to help develop an ICH policy, and more currently about to start working in helping for international assistance. So this gives you a sense of the kind of ongoing relationship that we have very often with some of the countries we work in. One of the challenges I've noticed as we go through a series of workshops is that there is a changeover of participants, as many government organizations, institutions send participants who hold a certain position. And then as we go through the years doing implementation and inventorying and nomination and safeguarding, by the time you're coming to the end of the trail, the same people aren't there anymore. So very often you find yourself you know, at the time when you should be focusing on something like safeguarding, to say, oh, but there's 50% here who need the convention to be introduced again. Or many of them have had an introduction. The one half knows a lot, the other doesn't. And so we've been talking to people more and more about the importance of keeping a core group of participants that is there throughout the training, so that when they're doing inventorying or working on their nominations, there are some who've been through the entire gamut of training there. Another challenge that I feel, I don't know if it's a challenge, but something we notice, is the issue of community-based inventorying, or the importance of the community in implementing the convention. And I think that it comes hard sometimes to people to think of this very bottom-up approach that the convention and the operational directives recommend. And I think that the workshops provide us a kind of space within which we can work and demonstrate how this can be made to work by giving a position of leadership or making community members as resource people within that, which may be harder to do in a large-scale project, but the workshop gives us a little limited space where we can do this. It also helps us to have a space where some of us as researchers can bring our own fieldwork experiences into and working with communities into the workshop situation, and that helps us work. Also, as most of us work in so many countries, we're able to create case studies from one country that we can use in another. That's another way that the network works. Also, as Harriet mentioned, each of us works with another partner from another country. So you've already got two different lots of experience. Of richness, and since the facilitators group is a bit of an extended family, we also draw on each other's experience in various ways. I think that's an important part of what this is. The last challenge I would like to mention, which really came to my mind, and it doesn't work to be such a big challenge, is language. That we're constantly working in countries that we are not, where we don't speak the language. But with the amount of effort that people are putting into creating translations and with very able interpretation, and as we slowly develop familiarity, you know, these have stopped being such a major hurdle. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. One of the challenges I identified was the how guarantee the ICH policies decentralization at the local levels or at the municipalities. And in fact, we noticed it was very important to involve these different stakeholders in order to guarantee the ICH safeguarding. So, and the municipalities has a very important role in this situation because they are the nearest with the community. Sometimes they are they conduct the dialogue in the quotidian and the routinary situations. So it was very important to guarantee the municipalities understand the ICH policies and the convention. So in this sense, we encourage the states parties, the Ministry of Cultural staff to involve these local stakeholders in, for example, in the conduction of the community-based inventory. So, as a result, this local government staff were trained and empowered for this position, this special position they have, and included they assumed the responsibility to conduct many safeguarding activities as a result of the inventory pilot process. And in fact, there's another, in this process of the inventory process, we was able to involve another stakeholders as NGOs or other local partners, and put these stakeholders together around the table to discuss and planning the safeguarding for these manifestations was very important in our experience. Another challenge was provide assistance for requesting international assistance. So in the process, as a facilitator, we have had the opportunity to create spaces to talking about to develop a workshop dedicated to this subject, and to create the opportunity to capacitate the government staff in conducting and elaborating, prepare the international assistance. That's it.
Thank you very much. Straight to our two colleagues on the left, who will speak about the value of the network to countries, providing country support. Yep.
Thank you very much. As Susanna from the beginning has mentioned, that facilitators are not restricted to deliver the modules that are known in the UNESCO, I mean that are prepared through the UNESCO, but they have to work as people who can, propose solutions to certain problems that arise while preparing for the workshops. I mean, according to our experience in the Arab world, I mean, where we have countries that are not in crisis and countries that are in crisis, we were supposed to deal with the communities and governmental bodies from the beginning to know how the situation is and to find the right solution, because the modules, in fact, they don't offer, always the solutions for such cases. That's why we were supposed to find solutions for every country according to its political, ideological circumstances. Therefore, I find that communication with the state parties is invaluable for planning from the beginning, so that we can convey the message of the convention properly. If we get inside the country, we have to understand the context in a multi-dimensional lens. And consider the local context and the local and cultural context, because there are some communities that are very conservative, other communities are modern and open-minded, and these things should be taken into consideration from the beginning. Of course, we have to know a lot about, we have to also glean information about the local context or local experience, what the country has experienced before in terms of safeguarding intangible cultural heritage. We have to deal with the communities, but it's the government and the stakeholders, I mean the governmental stakeholders and the non-governmental stakeholders in the country. We get in contact with them to know more about the context in this particular country. I want to mention also the issue of recruiting young generation in all safeguarding plans. For example, for the inventorying, it's important to have young people who are, eligible and also, have interest to deal with their own intangible cultural heritage, because we have to prepare them for the future, as the future cannot be prepared. And it's their own, they will be the custodians of their intangible cultural heritage. That's why I stress the idea of involving young people in inventorying, not only professors or, for example, ministry officers and those people who learn the inventorying, for example, on a traditional way, which is a part of, which is not in harmony with the intangible cultural heritage as understood by the UNESCO Convention. Also, we have to understand and respect local contexts by ensuring the gender issues, which is, in fact, in the Arab world it's variable. What we have in a certain country cannot exist in another country. Therefore, inclusion of females and males equally is very important, because the females, they have the access to certain intangible cultural heritage elements that are not accessible to males. Also, another issue is how to as a facilitators. Okay, I have 0 minutes. Okay, then I have time. We have to work as mediators and consultants with the communities, especially in conflict and countries in crisis, or with state parties that are in conflict. And we had the experience, Annie and me, facilitating workshops for people who experience conflicts in their own country. But it needs, a separate lecture for this. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I allowed that last point because I thought it was a very important one to raise around the role as mediator, moderator. I just need to say we need to say goodbye to the Assistant Director General for Culture. He has to slip out. Thank you very much for gracing us with your presence today. And now I'll hand over to Ms. Harriet Deacon.
Thanks very much, Deirdre. I'll be brief, and I won't repeat what Hani already said, which is about this interaction between the local and the international, or the principles of the convention and what's happening at the local context. But that is a very crucial aspect of the role of the facilitators. So what is the value of the network? Why would one bring somebody in who's not from your own country to help the implementation of the convention in a particular state party? Because most of the facilitators do their work in other countries. So the benefit, I think, of bringing somebody in from the outside who has had experience of the network of facilitators is the facilitators can help you make decisions about how do you best use the principle of the convention, the principles, the spirit of the convention, to do things to achieve the ultimate goal of safeguarding ICH with a view to sustainable development in your country. And what does that mean? These words are very broad. The texts of the convention are not easy to actually crunch through and decide which aspects of these do we want to prioritize. What implications does this have for our particular context, where, for example, some countries have a very strong tangible heritage sector already, other countries don't. They have different strategies, potentially, to implement the convention. Different issues, different politics come up in various countries. And I think the benefit of bringing a facilitator from the UNESCO network into that process is they can give you advice. Well, this strategy was tried in a similar country, maybe even in another region. And for these reasons, maybe this is something you might consider. It's almost like providing a shopping basket of strategies and examples from other places, where you can say, well, we could try this. Let's think a bit more about that. Oh, no, that definitely won't work here. It's a kind of just looking at that shopping basket and see what works. And so when we conduct the workshops increasingly, and Suzanne was pointing to the fact that the workshop programs have changed quite substantially over the time. Nowadays, we do bring in external case studies. We do rely more on video material and engagement, but we also do a lot of exercises bringing in local context. People bring local examples and we workshop them through to try and look at how the convention actually gets operationalized at the local level. So we're very interested in this interface between examples of what happened elsewhere, case studies of where things have been done in other places, and what is the local context and what's happening locally. The last thing I want to say is that it's not just about the workshop. You know, one cannot do a lot in 4 days, in 5 days, sometimes even in 7 days. It's not a long time. So we're very focused not just on what Hani was saying is the preparatory, work that gets done to try and tailor things, but also on the follow-up. Deirdre, for example, has been doing mentoring with some of the participants in her policy-making activities. A lot of us do this follow-up. We give out the emails. We try and encourage people to establish or to continue and grow local networks. And we try and link people into other international networks that may be of interest to them. So it's not just about the workshop itself. It's about the bigger picture and the long term in that country.
Thank you very much, Harriet, for those reflections. And now it's the opportunity for those of you on the floor to respond. And what we thought we would do is just to do an initial feedback to the panelists, sharing some of the observations where you have had members of the network working with you, some of the observations, some of the experiences that you've had, if those could be reflected back, and then I'll give an opportunity for the panelists to respond to that. The way we're going to do it, I'm going to invite 3 hands for the initial kick-off, and then another 3 hands. So we have 1 here, 1 here, and 1 there. We'll start off with you. Please, if you could introduce yourselves. We have a roving mic. If we could have the roving mic, please. Please introduce yourselves and the country that you come from. Thank you.
My name is Ismail Al-Fahel, and I am from Sudan. I want to speak. I am very worried about this finance situation that you haven't mentioned today, but it was there. So we started our negotiation within the Arab group to secure some funds. This is our project. We wanted to continue. It proved very important in all the places in which we have facilitated. So I ask also all our colleagues also to look for funds for this project. This is a point. I have a certain point that regarding, I have been asked to facilitate for the first time this workshop on safeguarding measures. I did it alone. I think that we need more data on this and Arabic translation for the text. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Could pass the mic to Emily.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you. I'm very grateful to all the panelists. Very interesting. My name is Emily Drani. I work with the Cross Cultural Foundation of Uganda. I have 2 questions. As facilitators, how do you position yourselves in a context where you're not UNESCO staff, you're not government staff, but you're giving advice on policy, and probably also on post-inscription? What is the role of facilitators in post-inscription? The other question I had was, because the number of facilitators is growing, is there a mechanism for quality standards and some form of control? How do you make sure that everyone is doing the right thing? Being a facilitator myself, thank you.
Thank you very much. And then to the lady on the right.
Hello, my name is Leena Marcio. I come from Finland. I'm a state party representative. Just a quick comment and to say about the first capacity building course we had in Finland this year. I must say in 1 week's time the implementation of the convention went forward like 10 steps. So if it was only me, the coordinator, who really knew the convention or what safeguarding means, after this day I had 40 people more who really were inside of it, the NGOs, the different communities, the civil servants, and also minority representatives, and that they all learned about the convention and went deeper into safeguarding, but at the same time they were able to form a new community between each other. And if before it was a wonder, why do we have in the same table a museum worker, a fisherman, a dancer, and a singer, they were not wondering anymore. They saw that the convention is for everyone. So for all of you considering to have the capacity building program, I really warmly encourage you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So do we have another 3 hands? There's one gentleman in front, another gentleman in front, and at the back we have someone. Thank you.
Yes, hello. I'm Jorge Caicedo from the accredited NGO. I just wanted to point out, thank you for the time, that accredited NGOs helps the evaluation body but are not considered as providers of facilitators. We have experience on the field with several years working with communities and bearers of ICH to help them in the day-to-day challenge. We can give continuity that due to the nature of governments sometimes is hard to maintain. Our goal would be to expand the scope of this facilitation to communities and bearers alike. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
I am Jayarajan from India. So my question is, there are some communities, how do you address the communities which do not allow others to involve in their activities? There are ritual practices in Kerala, especially in my state, in which others cannot involve, others cannot document, others are not allowed to enter into that community. How do you address?
Thank you. We have one last gentleman at the back.
It's me? Merci, mais je parle français. Je voudrais juste dire que nous vivons une expérience, déjà au Sénégal actuellement, de renforcement de capacité sur un projet qui vise l'inventaire, les mesures de sauvegarde, les modèles d'éducation dans les écoles. Le facilitateur, il est très bon. Il est même excellent parce qu'il connaît les réalités que nous vivons. Et c'est pour ça que je voulais vraiment attirer l'attention. Quelquefois, auprès des communautés, on trouve des experts, peut-être, quelquefois même plus experts que nous. Voilà, il faut qu'il y ait un peu cette humilité. Et les facilitateurs, c'est un facilitateur. C'est un facilitateur, ça s'arrête là, et il est très bon, il est spécialiste, mais c'est un facilitateur. Les experts, souvent, c'est les communautés et ces praticiens qui sont dépositaires de ce patrimoine. En anglais, je ne peux pas dire tout ça. Vous pouvez traduire si vous voulez.
Thank you very much. We have a gentleman with the pink shirt, and we have... okay, we'll start with the lady in front, with Juliet, and then we'll move to the gentleman with the pink shirt, and then yourself. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm called Naumo Juliana from Uganda. I would like to appreciate the facilitators and the age and the tool which is used to identify the facilitators. In some cases, culture is looked at as an aspect of older people, outdated, and so forth. Then the tool that is used to recruit can also say 10 years and so forth. Now there's a rift between the young people and the older people who know our culture. Is there a systematic or deliberate move to involve the young people in the promotion of our culture as facilitators? Not those who are being trained, but those who are facilitators. And this is key to ensure that these young people can use the technology. Now most of them are in technology. and we need that in culture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Alors, merci. Je suis Zango Marcelin du Burkina Faso. Et je suis en tant qu'observateur ici. Et je remercie vraiment Madame Suzanne. L'autre nom, je ne sais pas comment prononcer parce que c'est un peu compliqué pour moi. Voilà, pour toute l'énergie vraiment qu'elle déploie par rapport donc au renforcement des capacités en la matière. Et nous avons pu bénéficier justement donc de l'action des facilitateurs, notamment M. Siri Traoré et Madame Angoué, donc du Gabon, pour nous former par rapport donc à l'inventaire que nous avons pu tenir chez nous entre 2014 et 2017, qui nous a permis vraiment de faire notre inventaire. C'est de montrer vraiment que l'apport de ces personnes est très important par rapport donc à l'inventaire et toutes les actions liées donc à la sauvegarde du patrimoine. Mais je crois que aussi qu'un des défis qu'il faut aussi souligner, comme le disait M. Annie, c'est aussi donc la prise en compte du contexte. C'est très important. Il n'est pas le même partout, il est changeant, il n'est pas stable. Et aussi, il est également très divers. La diversité culturelle entre les différents peuples, ce n'est pas la même chose. Quand quelqu'un quitte un autre continent pour un autre continent pour venir faciliter un atelier, il y a beaucoup de choses à prendre en compte. Je ne vais pas être trop long, comme on n'a pas beaucoup de temps, mais je crois que c'est vraiment quelque chose sur lequel il faut vraiment s'appesantir. Merci beaucoup.
Yes. Hello?
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Sajda Vandal from Pakistan. I'd like to first appreciate a lot the modules that have been developed and what has been added on to the material, in the years that we've been working here since 2011. I was just wondering whether there is more material being prepared. Definitely, I feel that we should have something on ICH and education, which is the next agenda. We need something like a dedicated module on that. And I also feel that the IP module that we are dealing with, is very sketchy, is not enough. And I think there are very critical questions regarding IP which have not been addressed. And we need to have that in context of the real situation, the ground realities, because those are too academic in nature. I don't think they make much sense to anybody, because we are dealing with real issues when we go in as facilitators, and the questions do come up, and I don't think we are dealing with it. So one question was that, and the other has already been raised, but I'd like to reiterate that, post-inscription, what exactly is the role of a facilitator? Because I do feel that there is some way that you can push the agenda, particularly in the safeguarding, and that needs to be also kind of clarified. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy that we've actually moved into the second part of the discussion, because we are running out of time. So it would be good if for the next speakers to also articulate some of the ideas which you have in moving the network into its next stage. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name's Professor Annie Kashmir, Center for Peace Building and Poverty Reduction among African Indigenous Peoples. I want to thank you first for the enormous work you're doing on behalf of UNESCO and the sustainable development of our living heritage for a better human development. I want to just bring this up, and it is important that we should focus on it. The entire best value, market value, cultural value, social value that we derive from the 2003 convention can only be realized when we increase not just the capacity of theory, the capacity of the principles, the capacity of practice, but the capacity of the personnel involved in its implementation. Where am I driving to? You'll get that soon. We need to make the capacity building work more sustainable. We need to, secondly, synergize, build on the collective power and energy of not just the facilitators already formalized, but also facilitators from civil society accredited as experts that give advisory services to UNESCO within the NGOs. If you look very critically, you will discover that at most of contributions to the evaluation work, the surveyors from the field, there has been identified gaps in knowledge, gaps in practice. But we can only solve that by making the capacity building work more sustainable. And what point do I want to make? It's very simple. Number one, marry the Chamber of Facilitators sitting on the Paris network and with the Chamber of Facilitators on the NGO forum. Because you need to build it for the future. Draw from those who are here. If you want, call it the upper and the lower chamber. Whichever way you want to do it, that's fine. UNESCO has doing enormous work in building the capacity of these experts within the NGO forum. And if you had sat down and listened to, we left here with Elena to 10 p.m. last night because we were focused on building on best practices. The things that we need to do to add more value, or call it surplus value, to what comes out as social egregor from the convention to our people. We are nearest to them. But you need to tap into the energy, the egregor, the synergy of the best around. That's what I'm saying. It's just a plea. Thank you once more.
Thank you very much. If you could pass the mic to the lady just to you. Yeah, thank you.
Merci. Je m'appelle Wahida Tassani, État partie des Comores. Je voulais insister sur 3 points. Le premier point, c'est vous dire combien le PCI est très intéressant, la problématique. Disons que durant tous les ateliers de renforcement de capacité que nous avons eu à organiser avant la ratification et après la ratification, il faut voir comment les gens sont assidus, il faut voir comment les gens participent activement. Donc, ça, c'est un point qu'on ne voit pas ailleurs. Donc, dans un deuxième temps, je voulais dire aussi que, au niveau des facilitateurs, je dis merci à l'UNESCO et le bureau hors siège de Nairobi d'avoir choisi un facilitateur pour nous dans le cadre du projet de renforcement des capacités qu'on est en train de mettre en œuvre depuis mai 2018 et qui est financé par Bahreïn à hauteur de $245 000 pour réviser les politiques et réaliser les inventaires pilotes. Vous dire que le facilitateur qui est mis à notre disposition, qui est Mohamed El Amin de la Mauritanie, que c'est le meilleur. Je dis le meilleur pourquoi? Parce que il connaît la réalité et aussi la communauté aussi est très engagée vu que c'est quelqu'un qui est, comment dire, nous sommes francophones, il est francophone. Nous sommes arabophones, il est arabophone. Nous sommes africains, il est africain. Nous sommes francophones, islamique, il est islamique. Donc tout ça fait que au cours des ateliers, les gens sont à l'aise, il connaît la réalité, les gens aussi, il essaie de répondre au mieux les questionnements des participants. Donc dans un troisième point, je voulais dire que au niveau de cette convention, il faut beaucoup mettre le paquet sur la médiatisation. La médiatisation, c'est très important. Et quand on regarde les projets, il y a un volet, ce volet n'est pas vraiment pris en compte, mais on s'est rendu compte en mettant en œuvre ce projet que la médiatisation est très importante pour sensibiliser la communauté. Merci. Les communautés plutôt.
Merci beaucoup. So we have 2 last speakers, the gentleman directly in front of me and the gentleman to my left.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Je représente la République du Mali ici. Je voudrais vous remercier du fait que nous avons bénéficié de la facilitation dans le cadre de notre projet d'inventaire. Et je vous en remercie beaucoup. Cela nous a permis de connaître l'ensemble de la méthodologie d'inventaire et pour pouvoir procéder à notre inventaire. Mais ceci dit, l'une chose est de pouvoir maîtriser la convention, les méthodologies d'inventaire dans une salle. L'autre chose, c'est le terrain. Nous avons constaté généralement que les facilitateurs sur le terrain, dans notre cas par exemple, avaient du mal à maîtriser la culture locale. Ça voulait même être un facteur de blocage. Donc moi, je ne sais pas trop comment, Madame l'a dit, hein, la langue surtout, et surtout la culture locale. Souvent, ça peut être un facteur de blocage. Ça, c'est extrêmement important. Au lieu que le facilitateur soit le facilitateur sur le terrain, nous avons été plutôt facilitateurs à sa place. Souvent, ça peut arriver. Donc moi, je voudrais mettre l'accent sur le fait qu'il est nécessaire de promouvoir surtout les facilitateurs locaux, les facilitateurs régionaux. Moi, je pense que ça, c'est extrêmement important. Ça peut permettre de pallier au problème de langage, ça peut pallier au problème de culture, etc. Ça, c'est extrêmement important. Donc ça, c'est un constat que j'ai fait dans le cadre de la facilitation. La salle, comment les cours, ça, c'est une chose, mais sur le terrain, c'est autre chose. Souvent, langue, culture pose problème. C'est extrêmement important. C'est pourquoi il est nécessaire pour moi de mettre l'accent sur la promotion, surtout des facilitateurs locaux, régionaux, etc. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker, please.
Thank you. I'm honored to be the last speaker. And thank you very much for your informative comments. I'm Song-Yong Park from UNESCO Category 2 Center based in Korea called ICCAP. So our primary function is information and networking. Yes, in Korea, a couple of times we were involved in inviting facilitators for workshop in Korea, capacity building workshop for the last couple of years. And my question is, in brief, I wonder what could be, future picture of role of facilitator and relationship between facilitators and ICH educators, because recently UNESCO has been focusing on the role of education in promoting and safeguarding ICH. So for the future, what could be the picture, of role of facilitators and the relationship between ICH educators and facilitators? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much to all of you for your observations, your visioning for into the future, and for the really constructive ideas, reflections on localizing the training. And I'm going to ask my colleagues on the panel if we could just take 1 minute each to respond to a particular question which you are feel best able to respond to. We've had so many, and it's very hard to fit them into the last few minutes that we have. So perhaps the one would be around a future visioning and the relationship between local facilitators, regional, and then also in terms of the Category 2 centers, as well as the NGOs, the accredited NGOs, addressing issues of inventorying the challenges around accessing communities where certain rituals and rites are sacred and secretive, and how that has been navigated and facilitated. And then a question around, again, related to ICH and education going forward. What are some of the ideas and the thoughts on that? And then I think that's really the kind of categories in which the questions have arisen. And I'm going to invite members here to speak to facilitators who are around if there are specific or directed questions that you would like to ask after the session. So I'll start with my right. Lucas, if you could perhaps, just in a minute, respond to some of the concerns, issues that have been raised.
Wow. It's a lot of interesting. It's a very interesting questions and reflections. So I think one of the questions asked about the role of the facilitator, considering it's not UNESCO, not governmental staff, and nothing. And in fact, another person asked about the facilitator. So it was a very big issue for me, and I think for all of us. I think the fact that we are not part of these institutions has helped to us at a privileged situation, because we can speak and think in a liberty way. So we are very free to think and to help, and do not put one shoes and necessarily thinking with another way, in a specific way, because we can see every ways and very positions and understand how to think the government staff, how to think the UNESCO office, the local, the Paris office, the local office, and this is a very interesting exercise, and most important for me, how thinking the local community, the ICH group, and yes, I think there's nowhere where we are. It's a very important in order to solve the problem. We are not from that region, not from this community, not from. So the role of facilitator is to look as outsider and build the capacity of the discussion. And I think it's necessary to highlight a point. The UNESCO office in Paris was always very open to understand the dynamicity of this process, of the capacity building process. So, and they changed the vision about what is this program. And for me, it's very valuable in this sense. And in the cases where I worked, this was very important. We can change the situations, think, help. So this is, for me, it's a very important aspect. For sure, we find many problems regarding the fact that we are not the local, you have not knowledge, but notice, this is the most important, because I'm not expert in this situation. The only thing I have to do is empower the local stakeholders. So of course, I need to know the convention, the principles, etc. But I really need to do is to create a situation for the people, construct their knowledge, their process, their legislation, etc. So this is the most important to know the local knowledge.
Thank you very much for that, Shubha.
I'm sure we have similar things to say. I'd like to respond to Jayarajan's question on what do you do with communities. And I think it's such a great example for why the communities are the ones who need to take the lead to work on their own ICH, because then there's no question of outsiders getting in. So this is really the point of why community members are the ones who need to be trained to do it. And not. And more generally, I think I'd like to echo what you were saying. It answers 2 or 3 of the questions or observations as what we see ourselves as facilitators. And I agree with Lucas, it's very liberating because we're not UNESCO. We don't belong to an institution who's involved there. So we have the freedom to think about things based on our experience in the field as to how best we think. We are not there to teach anybody about their own culture. We are very conscious, I think our training, whatever we've read, the way we've gone about being facilitators, we are there to talk about the convention. That is what we are supposed to know. We are there to learn about the culture where we are working and to best help people to empower themselves to take the convention and use it to their advantage. We are not in any way cultural experts of the culture where we are working. I think that. And as outsiders, we are able to then look at it in an uninvolved, dispassionate way that this is, here are the tools, you tell us what the culture is, and we try our best to see how it can work together. So that's how we see ourselves.
Thank you. To my colleagues on the left, if we could be very brief, please.
Okay, well, I won't repeat any of the things that Lucas and Shuba have said, which I think are very true. I suppose as a state party, the onus in a way is on you to decide who you want as a facilitator. You negotiate who you want, you look at the list, you decide what is more important to you, somebody who's a particular region or background. And I think that's very important to strategically use the capacity building program. If you have a very good NGO network in the country that can provide this service, then use them. If you don't need the capacity, don't bring in the network. But if you're wanting something very specific, choose the person who can deliver that, tell them what you want, and ask them to tailor it to your needs. And if you want to involve community members to then go and do something else, make sure that that agenda is on the table, that this group wants to go away and do X afterwards. So it's not just one isolated intervention. It's not going to be the only intervention you do. It's just going to be a drop in the pond. And strategically choose how you use that opportunity for using the facilitators network.
Thank you. I don't want to define what does facilitator means, but as my colleagues mentioned, he is not teaching, he is not imposing his own ideas, he is learning, in fact. But I have to mention a very important issue, which is related to international assistance, for example. I mean, most of the communities that we have trained, they don't know about the international assistance that could be one of the tools and one of the modalities to safeguard intangible cultural heritage within their communities. We don't know about it. Therefore, we don't find from the Arab world, for example, maybe 2 or 3 projects were supported by the International Assistance Fund, by the fund of the UNESCO, and this applies also to the African countries, and facilitators are there to facilitate the convention and its terminology and its concepts, I know that it's difficult, it contains difficult concepts, but facilitators are there to explain it in a proper way. And other thing related to developing trainers among the communities. In fact, it's the aim of the module community-based inventorying. So, this module aims at training or showing people from the communities themselves how to be facilitators inside their communities. They are coming from the same hailing from the same community, from the same culture, from the same language, and they could facilitate their own workshop to be facilitators inside the communities themselves. And as the difference between facilitator and ICH educator, there is a big difference, of course, because a facilitator doesn't belong always to the community itself. I mean, educator, he's teaching a certain craftsmanship, for example, or teaching young people to perform a certain dance. But this is not the role of facilitator. Facilitator is dealing with the convention and as intermediator between the convention and the communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have reached the end of our time. Before we conclude, I'm going to ask facilitators who are remaining in the room if you could stand so that you could be identified. I know some had to run out because they're also representatives for their governments and so on. But if the facilitators who are in the room could stand so that you can get a sense of who they are. Could you maybe just shout your name and the country? Is that possible, please? Okay. Thank you. We now have to conclude and we have to make our way to the room. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating.